西ではない。東の遥か、四国を越えた、その先に広がる海の外から変化は参る。
死ぬると決めた。なれば手くらいは貸してくりょうぞ。
Hello everyone, I'm Wave, and today I would like to talk about Monobeno Happy End, which I would say is my favorite visual novel that I have read thus far. Let me just get right into it. First off, just right from the get-go, Monobeno is a very long visual novel. It's the longest visual novel that I've read thus far, being somewhere around maybe 64-ish hours, I believe so. So, pretty lengthy. I think the second longest visual novel I had read is Baldur's Gate, which was a bit over 50 hours. And Little Busters, I think, is somewhere around there as well. But Monobeno, if you look at the UI, just from the first chapter, on the bottom of the screen there is a bar that will progress and move to the right as you read through. And it's basically separated into chapters, much like, it would be in a book. So as you progress through each separate chapter, which is probably around anywhere between 20 to 30 minutes, you'll see that bar on the bottom of the screen tick over to the right, and it lets you know the progress that you've made in that chapter. Each chapter is pretty secluded, so it's not like the game is jumping around from topic to topic every 5 to 10 minutes. You're in a separate bit for a good while, which really does make it feel a bit more, thought-provoking, as opposed to, just kind of, like I was saying, jumping around. Just talking about from the first chapter of the game, we're already setting up the first two main characters, which is the player character Toru, and then the main heroine, which is Natsuha, which is Toru's younger sister. And you start out from the bus station. They're getting on the bus in order to go back to their hometown, which is Monobeno, which is this very rural, isolated village in the middle of nowhere, in the mountains of Japan. And so they get on the bus, and throughout the first 10-15 minutes, it is just those two characters talking to one another, building up the familiarity, and kind of just making you, the reader, believe that Natsuha is a very important person in the story. And as they go, and once the bus ride is finished, they get to, what is, I would say, a pretty, breathtaking introduction to the land of Monobeno, which I can hopefully play right now. I'll be quiet so that way you guys will kind of get a feel for what I mean here.
道とトンネルと山しかない。
これがモノベの村。でもこのトンネルを抜けたとこにはちょっと開けた道が。
次は大戸地駅。次は大戸地駅終点です。折り返しのバスはございません。
終点だって。もうすぐだ。
ほら降りる準備。
はーい。
どっこいしょっと。
ああ、お兄ちゃんじじくさい。
夏葉の荷物も持ってるんだからな。重いんだよ。
夏葉の荷物。ここしょしょどっこいしょ。
ああ、ほれほれ、夏葉や。降りんといかんよ。
お兄ちゃんがおじいちゃんだ。やだ。 時間通りじゃの。
ってスミ、なんで？
何とはなんじゃ。せっかく出迎えてやったというに。
いや、だって。
すみちゃん。おー、夏葉、久しいの。うわー、久しぶり。また会えて嬉しいな。
So yes, here we're introduced to finally the other two last main characters of the story of Monobeno, which is Sumi, which is, well, actually no, three main characters, because you have Sumi, who is introduced as a yokai, and she is the household protector of the family that Toru and Natsuha are from, alongside the other yokai, which is Hisyakaku, which is the otherwise known as the umbrella demon, and he is the older man, and he is basically the sword that protects the family, alongside the final main girl of the story being Alice, which is childhood friend to Toru and Natsuha, and then also their cousin. And once you've been introduced to all 5 of those main characters, then the story proceeds from there. And like I had mentioned in my tier list, Monobeno is very much like a slow burn. The first 10 to 12 hours is just you progressing through the story, just going about your days, enjoying a summer vacation in the hometown of Monobeno. As you progress, you are learning more about the lore and kind of seeing how the world of Monobeno works, where seeing the balance between both human and the yokai, and how that functions. As you proceed, you get to the end where there is this festival that is happening for the summer event, and one of the main shrine priestesses performs a spiritual dance to the god that oversees and protects Monobeno. And from that point, Natsuha has this breakdown, and she kind of freezes up, and then everyone kind of has to clamor together, and they take her out to out of the festival back home, and they end up having her looked at by the doctor, which is introduced throughout the time of what would be common route, because the doctor and the nurse are also part of that same family that Alice is, so they're the uncle and the aunt. They take Natsuha over to them, they have her looked at, they say nothing's wrong, and then that night during the event of where there's a rainstorm, Natsuha is not to be found inside her room, and then they end up Toru gets a knock at the door. He opens the door, and it's Natsuha. She's crying, but she has aged up probably to her mid to late 20s, and that is where the story of Monobeno really does pick up. From there, they try to figure out what has happened to Natsuha, to where she would go from this young girl to being where all of a sudden amount of events happen with the summertime festival, and Natsuha is now older, and they look at it from the perspective of, so there's 2 choices that you can make. You can go follow Sumi, and you would be in Monobeno studying the spiritual and yokai kind of thing. They talk about something that's called I believe time biting, which is a kind of rumor or mythos that's passed down through tradition in Monobeno, of how the spirits, the god of Monobeno, whenever somebody does something that the god does not like, they will bite them and steal away their life force. So they believe that that could be something to where Natsuha did something that it would anger the god of Monobeno and would then end up having her life force stolen away, to where she would now progressively and like rapidly age. And then the other side is to follow Alice, which is more of that doctor route, along with like the uncle and the aunt, and see, you know, what kind of like medicinal kind of illness could Natsuha have. So I believe in the story they call it IAGS. I don't remember what it stands for, but it's like a imaginary kind of illness that is where the person ages essentially like 1 year per day, or like maybe not quite that, but where they do believe Natsuha could die within the span of the next year because of the rapid pace at which she is aging every single day. And from there, you know, the story progresses on both of those routes. Now, hopefully I wasn't too crazy on the spoilers. I do believe if you were to look at like even the Steam page, it does say that in the description. But even let me just get into like some of the grittier details of Monobeno. So I think first off, I really do like that kind of like UI thing, like I mentioned earlier, with like the bookmarks and how the bottom bar on the bottom of the screen will scroll as you progress through chapters. Graphics are very like high fidelity. All the characters have like multiple different like outfits for their sprites on the screens, so it's very like meticulous and like how much detail they put into it. There's, you know, full lip flaps for, you know, 60-hour game. That's not something to really scoff at, considering like I mentioned in the tier list video, if you came from that video, how I mentioned with Eden, they do the same thing with full, you know, lip flaps and like blinking and all that. That's only 6 hours. Think about how like meticulous it would be to do that over the course of 60 hours. Voice acting is really good. One thing that I will say is, you know, Toru, the main player character, being the main protagonist, being a male, being fully voiced is actually pretty like sizable of like something to talk about, because I know from the most point, when it comes to visual novels, most visual novels don't have the player character voiced, and in the event of like some games where they are voiced, it's very like minuscule. Something like Little Busters, Ricky's voiced, but only like partially. Same thing for Takaru from Love. He has a voice, but it's very small. He's not voiced all of the time, and it's very rare. I feel like the writers have to be very confident in their character, because most of the time, playing as a character in a visual novel, you are meant to embody that character. But something like Steins Gate, or even the main protagonist from Fate Stay Night, they're fully voiced, and I think it's because the writers intended that character to be very defined, and for you to kind of live out their experiences as the reader, but at the same time, you're not meant to be that character. They figure that character is strong enough to where they can stand on their own and they can be fully voiced and have them feel like they make a meaningful impact throughout the story. So that is something that Toru, the main protagonist, does, to where I would say makes it, you know, pretty interesting. Now, hopefully, without spoiling too many things, going in from the two different perspectives of both the Alice and Sumi routes, they're two very like vastly different perspectives on how the game progresses. So, like with Sumi, it is, you know, about the yokai and spirits, and I do think, well, you have both her route and then the after route, which do combine together to create this broader story as Toru and Sumi work together to get to the end goal of trying to find some way to save Natsuha. And I think throughout that story, it was most definitely my favorite out of the 3 routes that are available in the game. I do like how there is this very nice balance between slice of life and kind of like this, casual atmosphere, but at the same time, how quickly it can kind of like flip on a dime and to be where there is these action scenes. There's a whole lot of like suspense in Sumi's route because of how things go, where they end up confronting like powerful, demons. And there is this very much like action-based kind of vibe at certain points throughout the story, to where Toru and Sumi are and Hisukaku being the umbrella demon, and how they have to kind of like face these stronger demons in order to get information out of them, in order to like piece together parts of the puzzle into how they would go about saving Natsuha. When we're talking about Alice route, it's very different. I like how even more so it is very like cozy atmosphere. Like I had mentioned in the tier list video, you end up leaving Monobeno in her route and going to the big city, and Toru pursues like an education in the medical field. So he ends up trying to like train under a doctor in order to try and learn more information about the disease, and then kind of like relaying that information between him and his mentor alongside his uncle that's still back in Monobeno, and trying to figure out, what is this illness? Can we cure it? And it's a very distinct and different perspective compared to Sumi's route, but I actually genuinely do appreciate it. There's a lot of various overlaps between the story as well, to where once you finally get into Natsuha's route, and you can kind of see the true broader story as to what unfolded in the time before the story of Monobeno even began. You can kind of see the overlap, see where even just like there's also stories of showing like Sumi's origin story, which is a separate chapter that you can play through, and seeing how that kind of overlaps into not even just Sumi's route, but also Natsuha's route. I feel like this was a story that was very like breakout. I do believe that it has a lot of very like minute detail to it. It's something that is, I found, just to be very enjoyable of a read. Like I was saying beforehand, I do enjoy Monobeno. When I went into it, it was just basically going to be going into it for the slice of life, and then I was very like surprised at just how high the bar of quality that Monobeno Happy End did end up having. But I do want to say, this might not be like the biggest, deepest dive into Monobeno that I probably could have done. I don't really want to spoil too much of the story, because it is something that you should probably go ahead and experience for yourself. Monobeno Happy End is available on Steam, surprisingly, despite the fact that it is a Japanese-only game that, in a way, I do feel is probably like most likely never going to be localized, just because there is a whole lot of issues that it would come up into when it comes to being something that would be localized. But yeah, I don't know. Hopefully this is like a little bit of a deeper dive into why I like Monobeno, and why maybe you should take a look at it. Anyways, I've been Wave. Thank you for watching if you've come this far into the video, and I will see you guys next time.